Hello, Marketology Group and Marketologists. We are on again with another marketing strategy session. And today I got Gabriel from Italy coming to talk about some exciting marketing things. And this is something that's really interesting because, it's not something I've really heard much about before, but, digital export and that's a term I'm not familiar with, and I'm very excited to learn more. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for having me. Hello, everybody. Well, digital export actually is a term we use in Italy. I don't know if it makes sense in English, actually, but it's about using digital strategies to approach international markets. So this is the long version of it.
Okay.
Well, we came up with this strategy 9 years ago, so way before COVID-19, because in Italy, we have a lot of small and medium enterprises. They are the 92% of the companies in Italy. So we do have big companies, but the most of them are small and medium enterprises. And they aim to export, so to sell abroad. Usually they are B2B companies, so they sell to other companies, especially importers, distributors, or retailers in each country. And when we built our company, this was exactly 10 years ago, we thought that digital could help in the internationalization processes of these small and medium enterprises. So we tried to use social media, especially at that time, to help companies to communicate to those specific countries. So the problem with communicating abroad is that usually, especially in Italy, companies use English to communicate everywhere. Actually, everywhere, the world speak a lot of different languages. And we discovered that it's not only about the languages, it's about the culture. Each country, or even inside each country, there are different cultures. So how do you use social media to communicate in different countries to different cultures to get a business goal, to reach a business goal, which is usually get leads from that market? So we discovered that the content is king, as we already know, and we started to apply a localized content, so written by local copywriters. So if a company from Italy wants to approach the Polish market, for example, we have Polish copywriters. They write the content specifically for that country, and we reach the goal. So actually, with these strategies, companies usually get from 3 to 30. I know it's a wide number, but from 3 to 30 contacts each quarter. And they are contacts of lead saying, okay, I know what you are selling, I'm interested in, let's talk about it. So it's a strategy, a set of strategy that works. And actually, in these 9 years, we are leading the way, at least in Italy, about this kind of strategies. And there were several changes, of course, also because social media, they transformed themselves from social to media. So now social media are more similar to a television than a social environment, at least if you are a company. So you need to pay so that your content is seen, because if you just go with organic content, only your small community will see it. If you go with advertising, of course, you can reach a bigger audience. So now we are more focused on advertising, which is our social advertising or search engine advertising. But still we are getting the results. And of course, with the pandemic, everyone wanted to better understand this kind of strategies, because there are no exhibitions, at least in Italy. They are starting again now in these days. So we had 1.5 years without exhibitions. So B2B companies needed to find another way to get in touch with their leads.
Okay. So this is a little bit more than just having something translated, like it's written and then you use a translator to translate to different languages. So you actually have staffed people out of different countries, depending on the client's target market, to actually create the content in their language and their culture. So it makes sense. So that's the approach that you're taking. Okay. So what if they
Yes,
have like several different, like for instance, they're in the, let's say the Italian market, they're in the French market, they're in the English market. This is a company that's trying to get a little bit more abroad. Do you source for each and every demographic, or do you kind of have them focus on one first and then migrate to another after that one has started to show some success?
well, that depends on the plans of the company and the budget, because the dark side of the strategy is that you need budget for each country.
Okay.
But let me make an example to better understand what the difference between translation and localization of the content. So let's take coffee, for example. Well, for you, I guess coffee, it's like something like that, big.
Yes.
For me, is this one.
Really?
So, yeah. So this is Italian coffee. Well, okay, of course, this is a small paper cup.
Wow,
But anyway,
that's just a taste.
it's a different, it's a very different kind of coffee. So if I go, if I am a coffee roaster, for example, and I want to sell my coffee to the US, for example, I use the correct translation of the word, which is in Italian is caffè, in English is coffee, of course. If I want to go to Poland, I use kava, which is the correct translation.
Okay.
But in the US, you drink a different kind of coffee. In Poland, you drink a different kind of coffee. In Turkey, another kind of coffee.
Wow.
So if I use the correct translation of café in those languages, I reach people who want to drink coffee, but not the Italian way of coffee. So I need to adapt my communication to that country, to that culture. And so this is not more a coffee, it's an espresso coffee. So I use a different word for the same product.
That is a great example, because also for quantity wise, because if we're selling like the coffee and you're talking about here, a pound of coffee, we're thinking, okay, a pound of coffee will last X amount of days, because we have larger cups, we brew it differently, so forth and so on. But in another area, that might not make any sense. They might say, well, I don't need that much coffee at one purchase. That's really interesting. I get a lesson in coffee.
Well, actually, I was in New York a few years ago, and I was at breakfast. Actually, it was a networking breakfast, and of course, as Italian, we used to drink a lot of coffee, but espresso coffee, which is much stronger. So at that breakfast, I was drinking like 7 cups of American coffee, and people looking at me like, "What are you doing?" But for me, it's like water. So like tea. It's very Italian coffee. It's stronger.
Yes.
And this applies to every kind of product in every kind of sector in any country. So it's not only about consumer products, because of course coffee it's better understandable, right? It works with water pumps, with irrigation systems, with implants. Implants of any kinds, industrial. So in any business, in any sector, industry, you want to use this strategy. So localizing the content, it makes the difference between getting or not getting leads for your business.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, do you start with I guess you would say with the goal in mind, like if this is the actual revenue goal we want to hit or the target audience we want to hit, and we are either already touching that market, so we kind of know what our numbers will look like, or B, we are very new to this market, we don't know anything about the market, but we want to enter the market. How do you, when you're talking with your clients and coaching them, how do you usually have them get into the right frame of mind with the right expectations?
Well, actually, I use the Visual Communication Planner, which is the framework you know about. Actually, it's a free framework for digital strategy. It has already been downloaded by over 36,000 of professionals around the world, so it's very known. And there is a book I'm going to publish, I hope this year. And the news is that the foreword is written by Philip Kotler.
Okay.
So it will be a book explaining this framework, which basically puts the basis of how to define digital strategy. And how you just said, it starts from the goal. So part of my job is basically a consultancy. So I help the client understand what is the right goal, the correct goal for the digital strategy. Also, because usually, I don't know in your market, but in Italy, when companies think about digital strategy and goals for digital strategy, they think about getting new followers or getting more likes or more comments or more shares. That is not a business goal, right? So if you're talking about B2B companies, a business goal is getting lead for that specific industry in that specific country. So the first step is setting your goal. And then it's setting the KPIs, because you need to understand if your strategy is working or not. So the Visual Communication Planner helps companies or professionals, marketing professionals, to guide their clients to understand how digital strategy is made, basically.
Yeah, I love how you said that. I mean, really, that is one of the challenges I've seen with a lot of businesses. First of all, they don't have the goal already set in mind. They just like, I want this market because I've heard a trend that is a good market. So there's no real goals or expectations. And the second part that you stated, which was very important, is setting those KPIs. They don't set up how to measure success. So you don't really know if you hit the mark or not. And if you're measuring it by vanity metrics like followers and likes and shares, it makes you feel good. But at the end of the day, business-wise, you're not really meeting the real goal. It just makes you feel good and the numbers look good, or maybe they don't look good. But, the thing is, like you said, you're setting, this is what we're trying to hit. Here's how we measure it. And that's up front, not while it's in progress. Now we have to say, well, we have 100,000 likes. How many of them converted? Well, I don't know. We haven't set up how to measure a conversion.
Exactly.
Like what we just talked about with Twitch. It's like, how is Twitch converting? Well, Twitch really doesn't have a pixel. So it's kind of hard to say, unless you're just doing Twitch and nothing else, how well Twitch did for you. So yeah, that's very important. I'm glad you mentioned that.
And actually, social media, or anyway, the internet in general, is becoming a big advertising space. That is bad because companies need to have budget for advertising, but it's also good in some way because you can test the channel, different channels. You can put 3 months budget for advertising on Facebook or Google or LinkedIn. And if you have a goal and if you have the KPIs, you will measure those 3 months and you know exactly if the channel is good for you or not.
Yeah. And then with the way you approach it, you also segment it by the location that you're targeting. So you'll say, okay, we're going to do some Facebook ads for 3 months. We'll take a quarter and do Facebook ads. But you want to hit the Poland market and you want to hit the Italian market. Okay, so we're going to split test that and see how it performs. And yeah, so that adds another layer on top of it to say, well, Facebook may work in, let's say, the Italian market, but for the Polish market, it doesn't really do anything. And so that might not be the platform to leverage. And it's interesting because a lot of companies that I've seen want to do one size fits all. Like, we just want to do Facebook ads across everything and the same way in every single market. So it's the same, pretty much the same ad, let's just run it across the world globally. And with that, what you're saying is that approach may not work as well, being the different cultures, the different, language barriers, those type of things. Just because you have a translator tool, switch it in grammatical translation, you're missing the context.
Exactly. And so if we go back to the coffee example, in Italy, everyone knows what espresso coffee is. So for a coffee roaster, the main target are bars. Our bars are for breakfast and for a coffee break.
Oh, okay.
So more than an afternoon or an evening parties. So bars are for breakfast early in the morning or coffee after
Wow.
lunch. So we have pubs for alcohol, for example. So bartenders know what a coffee espresso coffee is, what a cappuccino is. There are several recipes we do.
Okay.
So the company, a coffee roaster approaching an Italian potential customer, they do not communicate a lot of stuff because it's in our culture. So we know this kind of coffee. Once you go abroad, you need to explain all of this. And if you translate what you have written for the Italian market, then you miss a lot of stuff that you need to communicate.
Wow. And that's very interesting because you're right. With us, bars is an evening alcoholic experience. And we wouldn't even think to address a bartender with, with a coffee idea. An espresso for us is more like a shot of espresso poured into that big cup of coffee. So it's not the same. So yeah, that would make a huge difference if we were marketing it the way we understand bars and the way we understand coffees in other areas, other cultures. We would miss the boat completely.
Exactly. And this, again, it's true for any kind of business. So not only for B2C, but also for B2B companies.
How much research do you usually set as far as expectation wise? I mean, do you do like, look, the first month we need to research the market and then we can get started with the plan? Or is it something that you kind of research as you go? I know with marketing it's test and retry, but setting that expectation is so huge. So how much research lead time do you usually have allotted into your plan?
Well, we can split into that research. So there is a business research. So the company needs to understand what's the business target in that country. Okay. And we do not do that. So we pretend the company already has done that, or we have partners, friends who do the stuff. So the company knows exactly, for example, again, the coffee roaster, they know that in Italy they sell to bars, so retailers, and they need in Poland to sell to distributors, for example, or in Russia, they need importers. So they need to do that already. So they should have already that research. Then, and this is actually today a small part, we research only for the platform. And to be honest, in most part of the world, we use the same platforms, which are almost always Google advertising, Google ads, and LinkedIn ads. So these are the two main platforms we use. Also because we focus only on B2B companies. So we don't work with B2C companies. Of course, if you work with B2C companies or B2M companies, so those communicating to the mass, of course, you need to understand and research for more specific channels, for example, Pinterest or Instagram or TikTok in some cases.
Yeah. Now, have you used the Microsoft advertising platform in conjunction with LinkedIn? I know they just started doing that about a year ago. That now Microsoft has acquired, LinkedIn, and they've integrated the marketing. Have you leveraged the new Microsoft ad platform?
No, actually not. To be honest, it's also about budget. So usually small B2B companies, they don't have super big budgets. So if we have extra budget, we try different channels. For example, in Russia, you can use Yandex and also Google.
Really? Yandex is still around?
Yeah, it's still like 50, more or less 50%. I think this year or last year, Google overcame Yandex, but it's a small percentage, so they are more or less 50-50.
Okay.
And also, depending on the target, maybe you want to go on Google Ads or Yandex Ads.
Okay.
So if the company has more budget, we can do both. If not,
Mhm.
we usually pick Google as a preferred channel.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's cool. Well, I mean, that's a lot of information, and I thank you for sharing it. It really changes things when you're looking at doing an international type of play when it comes to business. I don't know why we keep thinking everybody thinks like us, especially as Americans. We always think everybody thinks like us. So we are like, this is how it is. We do it this way, and this is just how it's going to be. Instead of saying, there's other cultures out there. There's other, ways of approaching it. And we need to consider that when we start to look at going into those markets. That's a lot of insight that I didn't even really think about. And I love the fact because I do coffee every day, every morning. That's just one of my things. And I get this big, I wish I'd have brought it up. I drunk it right before I call. This big mug, which is like too much. But but our coffee is not as strong. But yes, coffee is a great example because it's something I could definitely relate to. But
Yeah.
tell everybody if they're looking to go into the global market, international market, how can they get in touch with you? And what would make a good, I guess you would say, client for you, instead of somebody that's just saying, hey, my beautiful thing, I sell to anybody that has money. So I sell to everybody. I sell to anybody that has money. So tell us, how they can get in touch with you and what would qualify them as a great client for you.
Well, I think that multinational companies that they are already in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So we can say around 200 million euros of turnover, more or less.
Okay.
So big, not super big companies, but big enough to approach the European market. But also my target is more about their set of mind, their mindset, instead of their turnover, which is they are not approaching the European market as a market because there is not such a thing as an European market. There is the Italian market, there is the Spanish market, the German market, the French market.
Okay.
And if you have this mentality, you are a good customer for me because it means you understand that you need to approach each country differently.
Okay.
Which is, I think, for US companies, maybe it's a problem because, United States are very different from each other's, especially from the North and the South or East and West. There are very much differences in culturally meaning, but you all speak English. And this makes very easier for you to approach a different state.
Okay.
In Europe, if you go over the Alps, you find like 3-4 different languages. So we are forced to think differently.
Okay. Okay. Huh. That's yeah. You're right. You're right. It's a total different change versus just a accent change. Or a couple of words that it may mean different things, but it's a full culture change. So that makes a lot of sense. So, well, I thank you so much for coming on, and thank you so much for the information. And everyone, if you are looking to get in touch with him, you can go to weevo.it. So it's weevo.it. And look at the structure. You'll see exactly how it's laid out. It'll answer your questions. And if you're trying to get into that European market and diversify where you provide your actual product or service, get in touch with him. I think he can definitely help you out. And this is a whole different approach. This is definitely something that I haven't encountered. And I'm so happy that you came on and shared with us.
Thank you very much, Jeff, and thank you again for having me.